The main topic which involves the rest of our video is the stereotypes. We choose to focus on it because we are exchange students, and before coming in the Netherlands we had a lot of stereotypes. But now we are living there, we can't avoid the reality, which is completely different. Because stereotypes involve members of one group attributing characteristics to members of another group, and this attribution typically carry a positive or a negative evaluation. But stereotype we had cannot resume the population of a country. So it's really more complex than that. And it's what we try to explain through the video, and more particularly thanks to the interview and people's point of view.
Another theoretical aspect is microcultures. Microcultures often have histories that differ from the dominant culture group with whom they coexist. In many cases, microculture groups are subordinate in some way. We think it's important for our work, as we realize that there are plenty of these microcultures in The Hague. As we saw in the historic part of the video, one of the reasons it's because the country received waves of immigrants in the last few years. So moreover, we could say that this is one of the most important aspects that we show in our project.
We choose to focus on the cultural context of the Netherlands because it's a very low context country, which is also linked with individualistic people. These two are linked, these two dimensions are linked together and are very important in Dutch societies. In the interviews, we spoke with people from microcultural groups, and they usually come from countries with a completely different cultures. So the first theory is low context. In low context societies, the verbal code is the primary source of information. Generally, they rely on elaborated codes. Although persons in low context transactions recognize the non-verbal environment, they tend to focus more on the verbal contexts. The second theory is individualism. So individualistic persons strive to maintain distinctive personal attitudes and opinions and prefer self-directed behavior and independence of groups. They tend to see themselves as unique from others.
Another theoretical aspect that we used is cultural shock. Cultural shock, for Winkelmann, defines this as a multifaceted experience that results from the numerous stressors that occur when coming into contact with a different culture. Anyone can experience cultural shock, although some are more prone to it than others. It can occur with immigrants, such as foreign students and refugees, as well as with members of microcultural groups within their own culture and society. We think it's useful for our video because we're talking about the migration and all the multicultural groups we can find in The Hague and how they live together in this city.
So the question 2 is what's the goal of the video? We wanted to make the target group sensitive to stereotyping. Stereotyping is automatic and natural for most people. When you don't know something, you try to group together all the baggages you've heard, the elements you've seen, the experiences you have had, etc. So you mix everything with results that you think you know more or less, but you know. And then you are confronted to the reality and it can be very confused. So the goal of the video is to make people sensitive to that, and we aim to show how The Hague is far from these stereotypes because of the multicultural identities who've lived there. Then the target audience is the exchange students who come to The Hague. It's a relevant message for them because this message makes the exchange students get rid of the stereotypes they probably have. It helps them to be prepared before coming to The Hague and to know more about the multiculturalism in The Hague.
Knowing that our goal was to show since students how Dutch people are in reality, not based on stereotypes, I consider that we've achieved our goal successfully. The use of interviews with real people of the Netherlands is the best way to show in the reality, and wouldn't be able to choose just one example. Because for us, the whole video illustrates the message we wanted to transmit to exchange students, our target audience.
So, concerning the beginning of the video, I think we won't have changed anything because the idea of the stop motion was a good idea because it makes the ironic situation of the stereotypes funnier, we think. But of course, with maybe more time, some changes could have been made, for example, about the interview. So we think that making some interview was a good idea because people were really able to speak and give their opinion. But for example, it could have been a good idea at the end of all these interviews to make like a meeting with between all these people we interview to see if there is a real cultural shock in the Netherlands. And of course, another change would have been the interview again, because it could be a good idea to interview more people, for example, older people with a real experience of the Dutch life. But because of our target, the exchange student, we were focusing on young people, so that's it.
So for this question we need to state our own critical question regarding the contents of the video. So the question we made to ourselves was, to what extent our video is really realistic? So although the topic about stereotyping we think has been successfully explained in the video, in reference to the microcultural part, maybe it is not completely clear, not even for us. With this I mean that the part of the interview is a good method to show the reality, but for some controversial questions people may not answer as honestly, not telling the real opinions as they are in front of a camera. This happened to us with the part of the immigration question, where few people went in depth with that topic. So girls, in relation to this last question, what do you think you've learned from this assignment and about the biography you did for the portfolio?
Well, in this assignment I talked to many Dutch students. Most of them were open to the discussion. They liked talking and sharing their opinion. Now I have an additional experience in my exploration of Dutch culture. Yeah, it's quite the same for me. It was really exciting to choose this subject because personally I learned how I was interested about learning from the others, and it was a great experience. And well, I'm French, and it's good to see that how Dutch people are able to live with a lot of different culture, and they are learning how to live with this culture, and it's really different from France because we are always complaining about it, and it was good to see this.
Yeah, so in my case, as I talked about immigration in the portfolio, I think I agree with what I said, because in Spain it's so different because of immigration. They are not so integrated as here in the Netherlands. And what I most learned when we did like the interviews, it was like the most interesting part, because it's the first time I really speak with Dutch people, and it's the first time like I get to know them, not only where they come from or where do they live or what they think about immigration, but how they really think or how they really live here in this country. So I think it was really nice.
Yeah, it was an opportunity to talk about immigration, integration, social relationship when you live with people from so many countries, like here in The Hague. So
Yeah.
Yes.
And despite the problems they mentioned, they tried to be fair, and actually they were very tolerant.
Yeah, and open-minded, as we said
Yeah.
in the
Yeah.
video.
Really,
Yeah.
yeah.
For example, about my experience, as I wrote in my biography, I was in Africa when I was 16, and also in that case, I had some stereotypes and myths, and when I was there, I discovered that that's not the reality, and it's the same in here with this assignment in about Dutch culture, and yes, I think that you have to know in depth something if you want to judge it, and we need to do an effort
Yeah.
and try to
Understand them,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah, I wrote this in my biography. I was talking about my first experience during my English work placement. I was in England, and I learned a lot from people from other culture, and that's why I decided to leave France and study somewhere else. So it was really interesting to know English culture, and now thanks this assignment and thanks the following months, we are going to be able to speak about the Dutch culture. So girls, maybe see you in few years in another country with another culture.
Yeah, sure.